So let's get right into this and start with some new product enhancements with RightFax 16.6. RightFax 16.6 now fully supports Windows Server 2019 and continue to support Windows 2016. It also now supports SQL 2017. Support for the COM API, the connector for Konica Minolta MFPs, and Windows and SQL Server 2012 have been discontinued. Previous versions of RightFax needed a shared MSMQ when running in a shared services or RightFax collective environment. This introduced a single point of failure, and the only way to eliminate this was to cluster your MSMQ server. Clustering was both complicated and expensive. So now with RightFax 16.6, the MSMQ was moved into a SQL database. So now you can use SQL redundancy and high availability tools such as SQL Always On and log shipping to keep your MSMQs redundant and available. High-resolution fax will allow your more complex documents to look much better when sending and receiving them. The only downside of enabling high-resolution fax is it does slow down the transmission. So we recommend you only enable it as needed. Okay, some fax utility enhancements, such as a visual history and an improved search engine, make both the thick and web-based fax utility more powerful than ever. You'll see both of these features during the demo later on. Okay, the RightFax archive module was introduced in RightFax 16.4 and allowed you to set aging rules to auto-archive your faxes to an archive database. These faxes can be retrieved directly from the web and fax utility using the new archive folder. Now with RightFax 16.6, the archive module has additional improvements, including the ability to exclude users and groups from archiving and the ability to set purge dates to remove faxes from the archive. The notification redesign will help eliminate inbox clutter of RightFax notifications. You now have more options on when and who will get RightFax notifications. The introduction of user customizable stamps will allow you to create individual stamp libraries. Stamps can be used to place your signature or any text onto a fax. Multi-page cover sheets give you the flexibility to add disclaimers or any additional information to a cover sheet and not have to worry about fitting it all on one page. The new deleted record report adds an additional audit trail to each fax, so now you can even run a report to see who deleted one or more faxes. Brand new with RightFax 16.6 is Fax Workflows. Let's take a look on how Fax Workflows can turn RightFax into an easy-to-use workflow engine. See, Fax Workflows allow you to create a basic workflow for inbound faxes. You can assign route codes to a workflow and then users to the workflow so one or more users can work on a fax. Workflows can include additional metadata that must be added to a fax manually before the fax can move on to the next step of the workflow or be considered completed. Fax workflows include file locking, so once a user is working on a fax, other users will be locked out until they are complete. The Advantage Workflow platform for RightFax is an amazing new platform that can be used to help automate document-intensive business transactions and processes. It was designed for more complex workflows and can be used with healthcare applications or any process-intensive workflow. The workflow platform for RightFax can automate manual and repetitive processes and provide a workflow framework to ensure faxes are processed in a timely manner. Automated library documents is a great new feature that allows organizations to enable on a group or user level the requirement to add a library document directly after the cover sheet. This is a great feature when you require a disclaimer and want to guarantee the disclaimer will be part of every outbound fax. Now, a lot of our customers use disclaimers on the cover sheet, but we find sometimes the disclaimer will actually be too large to fit on the first page. That's when these automated library documents really come in handy. Now, outbound OCR, also known as optical character recognition, can be used to check all outbound faxes for prohibited text. If prohibited text is found on a fax, it can be blocked from sending. This new feature will help facilitate compliance when your organization is bound by certain regulations. So we have a lot of finance companies and even now some healthcare organizations that need to look for certain words on an outbound fax. So using this feature, we can tag it. A compliance group can be monitoring faxes and either have it blocked or maybe hold for review and then let it go. Time of day routing can be used to route faxes to specific users based on the time of day it was received. This is a useful feature when you have multiple shifts and you want the ability to change who gets the fax based on time. So to go into a little bit more, let's imagine you had an AM shift and a PM shift, but they don't sit in the same desk. They actually had different locations and logged on with different users. You can use time of day routing to say any faxes that came into that user would go to user A between 9 o'clock and 6 p.m., 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., and then user B from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. Okay, next we'll move on to some of the new security and compliance features. Now, TLS support is now included when RightFax is communicating with LDAP sources such as Active Directory. This is just another layer of security RightFax has introduced and can be used in combination with the encryption module, Secure SIP, and Secure SMTP. Using all of these new features will guarantee not only all your faxes at rest and in motion are encrypted, but all communication between your RightFax server and your network services are secure and encrypted. RightFax continues to add additional certifications with MFP vendors, VoIP, PBXs, and gateways. RightFax 16.6 will also have JITC certification, which will allow RightFax to be installed in U.S. Department of Defense facilities, including military bases and secure government agencies. RightFax 16.6 is the first version since 10.6 to be in compliance with U.S. Department of Defense interoperability and secure standards with Joint Interoperability Test Command certification, also known as JITC. Since fax is a point-to-point transmission, it is immune to viruses, malware, and interception. With new features such as dialing rules that can block faxes to certain numbers, and now even block faxes based on content, faxing using RightFax is more secure than ever. Okay, next we'll move on to some of the RightFax integrations. As I mentioned earlier, the RightFax Konica Minolta MFP connector was discontinued and is now replaced with the Konica Minolta app. This is redesigned to be more full-featured and easier to deploy than ever. More and more companies are investing in the ultra-portable and inexpensive Fujitsu scanners. RightFax now has direct integration to these scanners, and with the press of one button, you can now scan to fax using this integration. These scanners are great for mobile workers. A lot of them fit in a small pouch or a briefcase, so they can be used, plugged into a network, and immediately with this integration, with one push of a button from the Fujitsu scanner, that paper can be scanned and directly faxed. Okay, let's talk briefly about the new and improved RightFax Resource Center. The Advantage RightFax Resource Center is a great tool to gather information and training on your RightFax product. Our Resource Center includes user, admin, and developer guides. We have tech tips, videos, and more. All Advantage customers can register for access to our Resource Center using the URL listed above. And that URL is the rightfax.atechnologies.com/register. Okay, I'll now show you a brief demo on some of the new features we just discussed during the webinar. Okay, the first thing I'd like to demo is the new shared MSMQ in SQL. So the way we configure it is you would go into your Enterprise Fax Manager, go to your services, and from the server module, you can double click and you will see your SQL connections. As you can see now, we still have a database, a required database for your RightFax metadata. We have a database for your fax images. This is with the optional SQL storage module. This was introduced a couple of versions back, allows you to install your fax images in SQL as blobs. So actually they store them in SQL as blobs and you don't need a separate NAS or SAN or file share to store your images. Here is your RightFax archive. I also spoke about in the demo. So here's where you would enable the database to store your RightFax faxes and metadata that are in the archive database. And lastly, your MSMQ database. So if you're running RightFax in a shared services environment or collective, you would actually click here and you would create a second or maybe third database just for your queues. So you'll have your primary database for your RightFax, your optional database for your images, and now this would be a third one for your queues. Okay, the next thing I'll demo, which it's not really a demo because for time's sake, I don't really have time to send the full fax, but I will show you where you now can go into your server module and enable high resolution fax. So it's just a checkbox in server module. As I mentioned earlier, enabling high resolution fax will definitely increase the quality of faxes sent to a fax server or fax machine that can support high resolution, but it'll definitely slow down the transmission. Okay, let's move on to some of the fax utility enhancements I mentioned earlier. So what I'll do is I'll minimize the Enterprise Fax Manager and I'll bring up the fax utility. So the first thing, let's go through the user avatar and visual history. So if you go to a fax and either right click and show history or click on the history button, let's do a show history, you'll see it looks very different. So now what it has is your visual and your avatar. I don't have my picture imported, so it just puts my initials of my user account. But as you can see, a fax came in and you could follow the flow. Came in that is blank because it's a transmission record. No one owned it at that point. Once I owned it, it now has my record, a forward record. So it forwarded from the Jeff, the JEFF account to Netter. A system process now was an OCR, created an OCR. And then it's telling us that it moved it to a RightFax gateway. So those are your improved visual history and avatar. Also, what I like is the new search. So previous versions of RightFax, you could do some basic searches. You could sort by date and time. By clicking here, you can sort by any of these fields. Now with the advanced search button and the search button here, you have the ability not only to search on metadata. So if I go into advanced search, we can do some advanced searches on individual metadata fields. So now RightFax can be enabled to OCR every fax that comes in and create an index file with the data. So I'll try to do this here on the demo. Let's look at an inbound fax and see if this works. I think it will. Let's go to the next page. And let's do a search for the word document. Looks like it works. So now every one of these faxes has the word document in the content, not just the metadata. And actually, in this case, it's not the metadata, it is the content. And that's brand new with 16.4, but I just wanted to show you some of the abilities that you can do some advanced searches. And I'm going to go into one more time. The advanced search is more for metadata searches and just a little bit more granular on what you can filter on your searches. Also, I didn't talk about it earlier, but I wanted to show you that on your view now, you have additional fields you can view. So now if you want to look at the ANI, also known as like the caller ID or the DID number, you have the ability to put all these fields here. So as you can see, the fax utility is becoming more and more like a mini workflow engine. All right, now we'll look at some of the improvements in the archive module. So let's minimize and let's go first to the group. So I'll show you where you can exclude your group from archive. So if we go to aging and archiving, this is brand new, exclude from RightFax archive. So when this is checked, anyone in this group will not have their faxes archived. And if I go back to where I was before, which was under the server module, and go to my SQL connections, under the RightFax archive SQL connection, we can now purge faxes that have been archived for more than any day you choose. So now you have layers of archive. So you have your first level, which is under the group, which will move faxes or delete them based on if you have the archive module. So if you don't have the archive module, faxes will be deleted. Let me just show you so you know what I'm talking about. So when we go here, faxes will be deleted based on the number here and how many days they are. If you own the archive module and it is enabled, faxes will first be moved to the archive database based on the number here, and then removed from the archive database based on the number under here. So in this case, after 1 year, they'll actually be purged from the archive. Okay, let's look at the archive folder. So as you can see in the fax utility here, there is a new folder called archive, and any faxes over a certain amount of time will be moved to this archive folder. There they are. And as you could see, my archive is set for basically 2 days. It's pretty quick. But we archived everything automatically, and I can view it, and all the tools I have from my main or all folders or any of my folders are available in the archive folder. The difference is the archive folder is using a different database. Okay, so let's take a look at the custom stamps. You know what? We've been doing a lot on the thick client. Let's take a look at the web client while we're at it. So we'll go to the 16.6 RightFax web client. Log on. And once I'm in, you will see I have the ability to look at a fax. Now I'm going to look at a 3-page fax that came in, and I will add my stamp. So there it is. Pretty nice. And I'll pick my Jane Doe. Hit OK. Place it. There it is. Really easy to use. And it's, as I mentioned, this is on a user basis. People can have their own stamp libraries. Okay, let's take a look at a very basic workflow. The workflows can be a little complex, so I'm just going to show a real easy how do we configure it and how it can be used. So first thing we'll look at is the Enterprise Fax Manager, and we'll see I have a workflow set up here already called Jeff Test. So let's take a look at it. So pretty straightforward. You give it an ID, a description. You decide who is responsible. Basically, so when this workflow comes in, who can go in and work on these faxes? And next you define your metadata, and you can add a lot. It could be well over 100 different metadata pieces and decide if it's required or not. And then you have to define a completion action. So after you do the requirements of a fax, when it comes in and you add the metadata as needed manually, what should happen next? So in this case, it's going to go to another workflow called Jeff Test Follow-up. We have to create a user with the workflow as a route type. So let's go to this user, so workflow 2. And I go to routing, and you'll see that we defined this fax number, this route code, for its route to be workflow, and it's going to deliver it to the Jeff Test workflow. So earlier, I actually sent a fax to the Jeff Test, and if you notice, if I go into Jeff Test, there are faxes here. Now I can look at them. Let's look at the one I just sent earlier, and I can, you see that's new. Now I have a doctor's name. So this is where I'd manually go through the fax and put Dr. Smith, and this prescription number, the prescription, let's say the prescription of the medicine he prescribed. Okay, once I do that, those are the required fields. I say save. And now it is saving the metadata in there, and it's done. So if I click out, the required metadata fields are filled out, and that is done, and it would move on to the next workflow or be considered complete at that point. So that's a very basic workflow. You can add, as I mentioned, as many pieces of metadata as you want, and you can have it move on to multiple workflows over and over again, or you can just move it to a final fax mailbox when you're done. Next, we have automated library documents, and that is done on the group level. So if I go into any group, we'll start with everyone. Pretty straightforward and easy to configure. You would go into your access control, and you would check this box. And when you check this, you're selecting for the group the one library document that you automatically want to attach right after the cover sheet. So I can select it, and now this would be used. Any fax that goes out for anyone in this group would automatically have the sample library doc attached. And the last thing I'd like to show you real quick is how easy it is to enable the auto OCR and outbound. So what you would do is go to default outbound settings on a user and enable this. In the back end, you will have a text file that would have all the prohibited words. And if anything in the OCR matched a word in the prohibited.txt file, RightFax would block it and can send a notification to the user or to a group admin or like a compliance officer that a fax has been blocked, and they can then look at it. Okay, that concludes our live demo, and now we'll continue on with the slide presentation. Okay, so let's do some takeaways here. First thing is RightFax 16.6 is more secure and full-featured than ever. The built-in RightFax workflow is great for basic inbound fax workflows, and the new Advantage workflow platform is designed for more complex inbound, outbound workflows. Now, I know I didn't get into the Advantage workflow platform. If you guys have or need additional information, please contact your sales manager, your RightFax product manager, and we can give you a demo on it, and we can also go into a little more details on it. It's a pretty powerful platform, and it can be used for any kind of advanced workflow. Outbound OCR, time of day routing, and secure Active Directory greatly increase security and help keep RightFax in compliance. And finally, new certifications and MFP integrations allow RightFax to integrate with more devices with less complexity.